All right, so as some of you may know, I maintain several Drupal-based websites. So one of the websites actually threw an error message, and I even trying to log into the site, that page wouldn't even come up either. So I was like, man, this is weird, because usually if the front page doesn't come up, you can type in /user if you're using clean URLs, or !q equals user, and get to the user login page and try to look at things from an admin perspective. But even that wasn't working. So I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to fix this without having to rebuild the site. So here's how I did it. All right, so first things first, as you see here, there are messages here for temporary files. Please do not pay attention to these, because these were not initially here when I made a copy of the database. So what I did, I was getting this, blank page on my production environment. So what I did was to export the production database to my dev environment, and then do all my playing around and try to figure out what was going on in my dev environment. So since I did not have the error logging of any sort turned on, that's database logging or system logging, the first thing I did was to go to my database once I loaded the production database into my dev environment. And if you go to the table, it's called variable. So I'm going to actually pull that table up here. And so all of the Drupal variables are stored in a database table. And actually I need to pull that query up in a command prompt. MySQL and so the reason it's not showing the value here is because of the data storage type. The blob will not show in PHP MyAdmin, but if you log into the terminal window, you will be able to see it. So I'm going to run that same set of command from the terminal window. And so the error level when initially set up is set to 0. Now, if you're familiar with the Drupal interface, in Drupal, it basically says none, errors or warnings, and then everything. So the value that corresponds to none is 0. So what I did was run a update statement to change that value from 0 to 2. And so the query here is update variable set value equal to s:1:2 in quotation marks with a semicolon at the end, where name is equal to error_level. And so the reason you're having to do this, I can explain why the value is written this way. So S stands for string. The number 1 stands for the length of the string, and the length of the string in this case is 0. So if you go and select, I'm going to select, we'll just do name and value from this particular table, from variable. All right. And so as you see, some of these are really, really long. Probably should limit that. So limit 5. All right. So as you see, some of these here are actually longer. So this particular variable is 9 characters in length. Edit is 4 with a hyphen, that makes 5, and then menu is making 9. So that's where it gets this 9 from. And so as I mentioned, with the error level, since there's only 1 character in quotation marks, you just get the 1. There are some variables that are stored as integers. And so for those values, this S would actually be an I, and it does not have that there. And I can show you that just for demonstration, and then we'll get back to it. So I%, and we'll do like. All right, and so as you see here, the integer values is just the I with a colon and then the actual integer value. All right, so back to what I was originally discussing. So originally the error level is set to none, which is in the database a value of 0. So what I did was to change that value from 0 to 2, and 2 corresponds with the all warning messages, error messages, everything. So regardless of what it is, it's going to show it. What I would also recommend is first I'm not going to actually run that just yet. If you're using MySQL, there is a thing called set auto commit equal to 0. And what will happen is anytime you run a query, it will execute the query temporarily, but it will not save what you've executed to the database. All right, so now I've set the error level to 2. The next thing I have to do, I'm still having the same issue of the page not loading. As you see, I'm refreshing, not loading. Can't log in, can't do anything. So what I did next was in my database, I found all of the tables. Let's expand this, if it will expand. It's okay. Let's go back. I'll use the command prompt window for the database interactions. So what I did was to find all of the tables that are cache tables. And so I ran the query show table like cache, and cache is inside of quotation marks and also surrounded by parentheses. Did I miss something? Show table. Oh, it's tables. It's not. So it's tables as in more than one table, not table as in a single table. All right. So show tables like cache. And then I got all of the cache tables that are in my database. All right, so then I truncated all of the cache tables. So I already have this query outlined here. So I'm gonna just copy and paste. And after running all of those truncate statements, the last thing I need to do is run commit. And the reason I need to explicitly state commit is because I have set the auto commit equal to 0, which essentially turns it off. So I'm committing all of the truncations that have occurred. All right, so now if I go back to the site and hit refresh, it's going to take a little bit longer to load. But once it does load, then I got this message here, FacesExtendableException. And as you see, there's no method of dependencies for this instance of the class rules action in FacesExtendable to a call on line 35, and then it gives you the path of where that's being called in the rules module. So I took this first part of this exception message and did a internet search, and what do you know? Somebody has already filed a defect on the issue back in 2011. And at the time of this recording, it is the June of 2019. There were some recent comments on this particular issue. And so reading the comments basically is the exact same error message about the FacesExtendableException with that call. I think it mentions a different line number. So this one says line 135. In the original defect, it mentions line 133. So as I read through the comments, some people listed out these steps that they followed. Some of these helped, some of these didn't. I don't have features installed on this site, so that didn't help me any. As I scrolled down, let's see, there was another scenario that was defined in here. All right, so not that one. All right, so they did this one. So they disable rules, clear the cache, browse to the site, did not get the error, re-enable the rules, clear the cache again, browse to the site, no error. All right, so it's like, okay, I can figure that, but how do I turn the site up? How do I turn the module off without being able to access it? I don't have Drush set up on this particular machine. So I went down here a little bit further and I see somebody else also disabled a couple of modules and got it working. and then somebody else did a rebuild of the registry, and that seemed to work here. So I was like, all right, well, I have my error message, so I kind of know where it is. So the next thing was to figure out was to, since it's clearly being thrown by the rules module, I figured I would turn off the rules module. So going back to our database, there is in Drupal 7, there's a system table. And in that system table, it lists the modules as well as the status of the modules. So I'm going to do, first I'm going to do describe system. And so there's a lot of data in this table. So that's why I'm just giving you a schema. I can show you that if we go back to PHP my admin, and I'll just run a select star from system. All right, and so you see here there are modules in here, information and their status, stuff related to Bootstrap and the version of said modules. So when you install a module, it's populated into this registry. So that way, if you ever delete it, I think it still retains it even after you delete it, but the status is set to 0, indicating that it is not installed. So to change and disable the rules module, what I did was to first query the table. And so I just did the file name, the name column, and the type is equal to module. And I forgot a from here. I'm also, and I'm going to set name equal to rules. All right. And so you see here, we have the file path to the rules module, and the name of the module is called rules. And I'll go ahead and even add the status in here as well. And you see the status is equal to 1, which means that module is enabled. So in order to turn that module off, I am going to run another query. So we're going to update the system table, set the status equal to 0. So basically change this to 0, where the type of module, well, the type is equal to module and the name is equal to rules. Now there is only one rules row in my particular table, but for simplicity and to make sure that I do not screw anything else up when making this update, I specified the type as well because there's only one rules module. All right, so run that query, and remember, since if you did do the auto commit equal to 0, you'll need to manually run commit. All right, and then after that, I went back and ran the truncate of the cache tables again and made sure that that was committed as well. And then when I went back to my website, it took a moment, but once it did manage to rebuild all of the tables, the cache tables that is, the website loaded and I was able to log in. Now, the reason why you don't see any styling on this is because it's set up in my dev environment and I copied the data straight from production. So I haven't told it to rebuild the styling or theme on this. So that's why it looks very bland. But as you see, now I actually have a login page. And if I refresh, these temporary files are showing up, but that's minor. I think it's because of the path of said temporary files. But as you see, I'm able to now log into it and I'm able to go and make the necessary adjustments and so forth. What is stated here is a lot of people, they end up having to uninstall the modules and then reinstall those modules back in order to get it to work again. So I'm going to do that, and hopefully that will fix this rules issue. But if you ever encounter this issue, this is how I went about resolving it. It's probably not the cleanest way of doing it, but it did get the job done. So I'll be adding my video that I'm creating here to this particular post. I will also put a link to this post in the video description below. If you have managed to find a different way to resolve this particular issue to get your Drupal 7 site back running again, you can leave that in the comment section below. Any questions that you may have associated with this, please leave that in the comment section below and I'll respond back to you about those. In the meantime, please be sure to check out my website, thealmostengineer.com, as well as follow me on Instagram and Twitter at almostengr. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.